in the restricted area.
Drew, the 14 threes are the most in franchise history in the first half as Kristaps Porzingis rocks the rim.
Well, and this one right here is a unicorn, CM.
And that is our drive of the game tonight, presented by your Washington area Honda dealers. Don't jump.
Yo, what's going on, YouTube? I'm back with another video. Wherever you're at, however you're watching, thanks for tapping in. Pretty interesting three-way team trade that was made in the NBA between the Wizards, Celtics, and Grizzlies. And I want to recap the trade in case you missed anything and talk about my view on the trade overall. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave your thoughts in the comments below. And without further ado, let's dive in. So three-way trades are more complex, but this trade really comes down to what each team received from who. And I have that up on the screen now to make it easier to visualize the moving parts. And so basically, the Celtics get Kristaps, Porzingis, and 2 first-round picks. The Grizzlies get Marcus Smart. And the Wizards receive Tyus Jones and 2 other expiring contracts with a second-round pick in the 2023 NBA Draft. So moving along to some of my first thoughts on this trade. Initially, I was thinking, man, it sure is tough to sleep out here since Woj never sleeps. And this news dropped right after the midnight hour. But all in all, it's really never too late for a Woj bomb. And when the news on this one dropped, I also was surprised that this trade ultimately went through, just based on all the reports from earlier that night. Speaking of, here's Woj right here, one of his bombs.
Yeah, you heard me right. The 5th made three-point shot.
This big 3-team deal that was on the verge or possibly in the works of being completed between Boston, the Clippers, and the Wizards that most notably would have sent Porzingis to Boston and Brogdon to the Clippers, apparently, as you see on your screen, is off. Woj is back with us tonight. When you were with us about 20 minutes ago, you said these deals, Zubin, you said these deals are complicated. Don't assume anything just yet. What can you tell us about why it's off?
Zubin, that's right. That 3-team deal that would have sent Kristaps Porzingis to Boston, Malcolm Brogdon to the Clippers, and a first-round pick and some players to the Wizards has perished, I'm told.
And the reason is that initial trade fell through is looking like it has to do with Malcolm Brogdon's health, which, I don't know, maybe if it possibly just made the Clippers take a step back and just bail out on this whole thing completely. But that's something we're just going to have to keep our eye on. And he's currently making $22 million this year for Boston. So it's kind of a heavy price for a player that's unavailable to play. Now, something else that came to mind initially is that the Celtics just might be the best team in the East now. And it's fair to say that I'm rocking with that idea until the dust settles with the other teams in the East and we know more. And specifically with the Bucks and the 76ers. So moving along, I didn't really like the value that the Wizards got back for Bradley Beal, but I think I have to say that the value they received in this trade with bringing in Tyus Jones is a small step in the right direction. And finally, for the Grizzlies, they shore up their defense and add veteran leadership by bringing in Marcus Smart. Now we'll get into some of the positives that I took away from this trade. So overall, for the Celtics, I say this trade definitely improves their offense almost immediately, right? The Unicorn KP is a 20-point walking bucket whenever he's healthy, and he's coming off a really good year, possibly his best and his healthiest. For the Wizards, they add one of the most underrated point guards in the league in Tyus Jones, who's probably somewhere between the best backup point guard and a starter, which maybe we'll see something along the lines of him starting in Washington moving forward. For the Grizzlies, they secure their backcourt defense and their defense overall by adding a defender back to anchor with Jaren Jackson. And this summer, we all remember they lost a defender in Dylan Brooks, Mr. Poke the Bear. So I like that move for them overall. And I think with the Ja suspension, Marcus Smart could be a solid veteran presence to help keep that team afloat in the West. And I think that's just a quick summary, and that about wraps it up for my views on the positive takeaways at a glance. So now we'll move on to some of the negatives that I found from this trade. So surprisingly, I can't find any negatives here for any of the 3 teams involved. Honestly, I think everyone got moderately better from their rosters before the trade, and I don't think any of these moves drastically puts any teams in harm's way financially later down the road. So I was inspired to make a video about this trade because there's really some fascinating topics and questions that this trade presents. And I'll close this video by reflecting on my overall analysis of the moving parts and teams impacted moving forward. I want to start off by saying that Marcus Smart was the heart and soul of that team and their best defender during his 9-year tenure there. I do love defensive-minded players in general, but let's be honest, the best defensive players can get done the worst way by the best offensive players in the world. So while I agree you need defense, I think the focus can become overvalued. At the end of the day, you need a good rim protector or perimeter defense. And if you have both, you're usually an all-time defense regardless. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think losing Marcus Smart could impact the team more so emotionally without Tatum or Brown stepping up to fill that void. But it's also fair to say that they just hit a wall offensively in the 2023 playoffs versus the Heat. And some might argue that maybe they don't win the series against the 76ers without Marcus Smart. But I might make the case that KP alongside White, Tatum, and Brown, you take your pick of the rest of the litter, would have beaten Miami. And speaking of White, my view on the Celtics playoff run in 2023 is that Derek White overall was more impactful than Marcus Smart. And moving along and looking at the Celtics front court, if you look at the modern NBA, Al Horford is getting old. Robert Williams is what he is at this point. And both players, while they have specific skill sets individually, we can see that they are limited, right? And the league is shifting back towards big. Tatum is now going into year 7, and he's about to be old enough to consider a veteran after a few more seasons. And so with that being said, I do think it was time for the Celtics to move on from Marcus Smart. And you need a guy that Tatum and Brown can play two-man high pick and roll with that adds some sort of versatility and size on the offensive side of the ball and also gives you some real rim protection. And I think KP does that at a reasonable price for now, coming off one of his best years. Now, to wrap up my analysis on Boston, let's toss out some questions. Who do we expect to step up and lead this team as the new heart and emotional leader? Am I way off by saying that this trade is a big win for Boston by allowing them to shift towards a bigger, more versatile offense? Did Boston overreact by trading Smart after losing to the Heat? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll finalize my thoughts on the Wizards by saying that I really do think that bringing in a guy like Tyus Jones assertively points their franchise back towards W's. And if you're going to have to hit the rebuild or reset button, personally, I wouldn't mind doing so and starting with a guy like Tyus Jones, who is skilled, mature, and cool under pressure. So he should be a steady presence for them moving forward. Now, obviously, there's a lot to speak about on the Wizards front with them just adding Jordan Poole for the CP3 trade. But I do want to keep the scope of this video just this 3-team trade. So to land this discussion, I think that this 3-team trade that was executed was pretty exciting, and I think each team received pretty good value back in return for what they gave up. Also, I think all 3 teams took a step forward and overall improved, as we said earlier, and I can't wait to analyze the other subsequent moves that are made after the draft and later this offseason. But with that, that's all I got. So don't forget to subscribe to this channel, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. I'm out. Peace.
KP, the ball is just moving around. Let's see what Jordan Goodman can do with it.
Found the right man at the right time, Sam.
Kristaps, Porzingis.
Exact opposite of what they did last night.